In 2013, former U.S. Army soldier Chelsea Manning was convicted of leaking government documents and was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Now, in a previous video, I detailed all the amazing work that Manning did, which essentially boils down to, as a whistleblower, she exposed American war crimes abroad. And in Obama's last year, he commuted her sentence, which has now led to this. Chelsea Manning files for Senate run in Maryland. Manning will run against Democrat Senator Bob Cardin, Maryland's senior senator, for the party's nomination in November. Cardin is expected to win the race to serve a third term. So Manning is running as a Democrat to unseat a Democrat. Now, here's some more detail about who Ben Cardin is from Glenn Greenwald at The Intercept. Cardin's decades-long career as a politician from the start has been steeped in unearned privilege. He first won elective office back in 1966, when his uncle, Maurice Cardin, gave up his seat in order to bequeath it to his nephew Benjamin. With this dynastic privilege as his base, he has spent the last 50 years climbing the political ladder in Maryland. Now, Greenwald goes on to say how Cardin has been a standard Democrat, with very few achievements despite being in Congress since 1987. But one of his few distinctions is that he has become one of the Senate's most reliable and loyal supporters of AIPAC's agenda and the Israeli government, if not the single most loyal. Cardin's crowning achievement came last year, when he authored a bill that would have made it a felony to support a boycott of Israel, a bill that was such a profound assault on basic First Amendment freedoms that the ACLU instantly denounced it, and multiple senators who had co-sponsored Cardin's bill, such as Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, announced that they were withdrawing their support. Now, I think Cardin's moderate to right-wing positions helps set Chelsea Manning apart, as from what we know of her, Manning is a progressive, and it's something that the Washington Post intimates in their piece as well. Manning wrote that Obama left behind hints of a progressive legacy, but very few permanent accomplishments. This vulnerable legacy should remind us that what we really need is a strong and unapologetic progressive to lead us, Manning wrote. What we need as well is a relentless grassroots movement to hold that leadership accountable. So from what we know of Chelsea Manning's career and her writings, she is a strong progressive, and as the Washington Post states, she has written about transparency, free speech and civil liberties, transgender rights, and computer security. So of course, Chelsea Manning is a Russian spy. I'm joking, but that's what the Democratic establishment is now apparently trying to paint Chelsea Manning as. Highlighted by Greenwald's Intercept piece, this is what was sent out in a tweet in opposition to Chelsea Manning. Senator Cardin authored and released a 200-page masterpiece on Russian influence in Western elections. Suddenly, he has a primary from Kremlin stooge Assange's WikiLeaks primary source Chelsea Manning. The Kremlin plays the extreme left to swing elections. Remember that. Now, crazy thoughts are tweeted out all the time, but this crazy thought was actually retweeted by Neera Tanden, the president of the Center for American Progress, which, despite its name, does not fight for progress, and instead is a think tank for corporate Democrats. So no, Chelsea Manning is not a Russian stooge, and just imagine if progressives were opposing a trans person for Senate. We would be called bigots. But when they do it, oh, it's because she's a Russian spy. They know very well that Chelsea Manning is not a Russian spy, but they oppose her because she opposes the status quo, the neoliberal policies that have made these people like Neera Tanden incredibly wealthy. Now, there is an actual more substantive argument against Manning's chances in her Senate run, so I want to address that, and this is what the Washington Post highlights here. Cardin, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has an extensive fundraising base in Maryland and is not considered particularly vulnerable to a challenge from any known figures within the state. However, a candidate with the national name recognition, such as Manning, who comes in from the outside, could tap a network of donors interested in elevating a progressive agenda. So they raise the point about fundraising. Now, before I even get to the larger point here, I always find it funny that these articles, when they write about fundraising, they never address how insane the whole discussion is. The fact that judge a candidate's potential ability to win an election based on the kind of money they can raise. That alone shows you how broken the system is. When really the most viable people in their mind, and it is reality, are the people that have connections to the most wealthy people or large corporations willing to give big donations. When that's a key part of the discussion, that's a broken system. So I'm just putting that part out there. Now, apart from that, they raise the point that, Cardin has an extensive fundraising base, and it is important, unfortunately, in this day and age to have that. But they also mention, and good on them for mentioning this, that Manning has national name recognition. And that's something that even Bernie Sanders didn't have when he was running against Hillary Clinton. And despite that, he was able to close a 60-point gap and was able to raise more money than Hillary did. And that was based on a set of policies that people in the country wanted to see implemented. Now, Manning, I hope, does the same sort of thing. And I think she potentially can, because she is, unfortunately, one of the only progressives that has national name recognition. And that, combined with her potential to tap progressive groups like maybe Justice Democrats or Our Revolution or Democratic Socialists of America, potentially having that in her back pocket to help raise the money needed to run against Cardin, could lead her to a potential victory. Now, there is something that about her run so far that I'm not overly enthused with, and that's her first campaign ad. So I'm going to play a clip from that. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but here's a clip just to give you a general idea.
We live in trying times. Times of fear. Of suppression. Of hate. We don't need more or better leaders. We need someone willing to fight. We need to actually take the reins of power from them. We need to challenge them at every level.
Okay, now I get the general idea. The idea that, Congress isn't working for you, and in many ways is actually working against you. And we live in a time of fear and a time of suppression, and yeah, I agree with all that. But I guess the issue I have here is that it's too negative and it's very unspecific. So I know this is just, the first campaign ad that she's put out. I assume there's going to be a lot more that we're going to hear from her and actual policy that she wants to push forward. And maybe that's why we don't hear any of that here, because maybe that isn't all fleshed out yet. But I think that the tone, she would benefit from a more positive tone. A tone that is more in line with somebody like, say, Bernie Sanders, who puts forth a more hopeful message of actual policy that, when implemented, would help the masses. Now, that's not what Chelsea Manning is offering so far, but we know, as we've read from Chelsea Manning, she is a progressive. So we have to assume that she supports policies like Medicare for all or tuition-free college, but we haven't seen them yet. So this is what we have so far to judge her run, and I hope there's more to follow that is more specific and maybe a little more positive to actually not just get people who are angry at Congress, but get people out who haven't voted in a while because they have felt disenfranchised from the whole process, because the process has become so negative and isn't about the people, and instead has become about big donors and the wealthy. So if Manning can jump on that and offer some real solutions to that, then I think that would help to support this message that isn't just an anti-government message, but is also a message that, look, I can actually do something for you if you vote me into Senate. Now, overall, I hope she wins. I mean, it's still a while away till we see how this run goes, but in terms of all of the progressives that are running so far, she seems to be one that has a good chance at actually winning her race. And that's because of her name recognition and her history as a whistleblower.